The night was quiet. Too quiet. The human sat alone in his small home, the glow of a weak lantern flickering against the walls. Outside, the world was silent, only the sound of wind moving through the empty streets. He was used to silence, used to being alone. That night he thought it would be the same as every other night, but then a sound broke the silence. A knock, soft at first, then again, louder, urgent. He froze. His house was far from the main road. No one ever came to his door who would knock at midnight. His heart began to beat faster. A feeling of unease crept into his chest. He stood up slowly, moving toward the door. Each step felt heavy. His mind whispered warnings. Maybe it was trouble, maybe danger. He hesitated. Then the knock came again, sharp and desperate. Whoever was out there was not leaving. The human reached the door and placed his hand on the handle. For a moment he closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, then he pulled it open. What he saw made his breath catch. On the doorstep stood an alien woman, her skin pale with strange patterns glowing faintly in the dark, her eyes large and wet with tears. Behind her, 2 small children clung to her legs, their tiny bodies trembling, their faces hidden in fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Human, my children need a father. Take us in." The word struck him like lightning. He stared, unable to answer. The children looked up at him, their eyes wide, filled with hunger and fear. The woman's hands were shaking. She pressed them together. In a gesture of begging, he felt torn. Why had she come to him? He was no warrior, no leader, just a man living in silence. His life had no space for anyone else, yet here she stood, fragile and desperate, asking for more than he had ever imagined giving. The cold wind swept through the doorway. The children shivered. The woman's eyes held both fear and hope, a strange mix that made his chest ache. He could close the door, pretend this never happened. But could he really? His voice finally broke the silence. "Why me?" he asked softly. "Because no one else will," she answered. Her voice cracked. "My clan cast me out after my husband died. They say I am cursed. They say my children are a burden, we have nowhere else to go." Her words hung in the air, heavy with sorrow. The human felt his hands tremble. He had lived alone for so long, keeping the world away. But now the world had come to his doorstep in the form of a broken family. He looked at the children again. Their clothes were torn, their feet dirty. One of them clutched a small broken toy, holding it tightly, as if it was the last thing left in their world. His heart softened just a little. Still doubt gnawed at him. What if her enemies followed her here? What if danger came with her? Opening the door to her might mean opening the door to chaos. The knock had already changed everything, though. He could no longer pretend to be alone. Not truly. Finally, with a slow movement, he stepped aside, his voice low but firm. "Come." And the alien widow gasped with relief. She pulled her children close and guided them inside. Their small feet crossed the threshold. Their wide eyes looked around his simple home. For the first time in a long time, his empty house was no longer silent. As he closed the door behind them, his mind raced with questions. Who exactly was she? Why had fate brought her to his door? And what dangers were now waiting in the shadows outside? The knock at midnight was only the beginning. The human watched as the alien widow stepped carefully into his home. Her children stayed close to her legs, holding onto the cloth of her dress. Their eyes were wide, scanning the small room as if expecting danger to jump out from the shadows. The human felt the weight of their presence pressing against the silence he had lived in for so long. She lowered her head, her voice soft. "Thank you for letting us in." Her tone carried both gratitude and shame, as if she had begged too many times before and been rejected each time. The human closed the door slowly, his hand still trembling. He stood with his back against the wood for a long moment, breathing deeply. He felt as if the air had grown heavier. His quiet life had been broken with one knock, and now there were strangers in his home. The children whispered to each other in a language he could not fully understand. Their voices were weak, almost afraid. The human walked to the corner of the room and lit another lantern, casting more light across the space. He saw the alien widow clearly now. Her clothes were torn and dirty, the fabric clinging to her thin frame. Her skin had markings that glowed faintly, like fading stars across her arms and face. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but she looked tired, exhausted. Her eyes had deep circles, her lips dry. The human pulled out a chair from the table. "Sit," he said. His voice sounded harsher than he meant. She nodded quickly and lowered herself into the chair, her children climbing into her lap. The way they clung to her made his chest ache. For a moment, silence filled the room again. He did not know what to say, and she seemed afraid to speak more. Finally, he asked, "What is your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." She touched the heads of her children gently. "This is Sari. And this is Tovan." The human looked at the small faces. Sari was the older one, maybe 6 years old in human years. Her hair was short and messy, her eyes sharp but tired. Tovan was younger, perhaps 3. He sucked his fingers nervously and hid his face against his mother's shoulder. "Why here?" the human asked, his voice low. "Why come to my door?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears again. She lowered her head and spoke in a trembling voice. "Because no one else would take us. My husband died in the war. His clan turned against me. They called me cursed. They said my children were weak. They cast us out. We had nowhere else to go." The human felt a strange mix of anger and pity stir inside him. He clenched his fists. His life had been simple, empty, but safe. He had chosen solitude, but now he was staring at a family that had been thrown away like trash, and they were looking at him as if he was their last hope. The children shifted. Their stomachs growled softly. The human noticed and stood. He went to a small cupboard and pulled out what little food he had, bread and dried meat. He placed it on the table. Lyra's eyes widened as if she could not believe. She quickly broke the bread into small pieces and gave it to her children. They ate fast, too fast, crumbs sticking to their lips. The human watched quietly, something tightening in his chest. He had seen hunger before, but not like this. Not this desperate. Lyra did not eat. She pushed all the food toward her children. Her hands shook as she brushed their hair back, whispering soft words to calm them. The human saw her sacrifice and it cut deep into him. Still, questions burned in his mind. He leaned forward, his voice serious. "Lyra, are you hiding from someone?" Her hands froze. Her eyes flicked to the window, shadows moving outside in her imagination. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Yes. They are hunting us." The human felt his blood run cold. His fears had been right. By opening his door, he had let danger inside. Enemies might come for her, and if they did, his home would become a battlefield. But as he looked at her trembling form and her children resting in her arms, he knew one thing. He could not send them back into the night, not after seeing their fear. The silence stretched, broken only by the children's soft breathing. The human leaned back slowly, his mind racing. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" And somewhere in the distance outside the house, a faint sound echoed in the night, a sound that hinted he was no longer alone in this decision. The stranger was now inside, and with her came shadows that would not leave easily. The human could not sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The soft breaths of the alien children carried faintly from the other room. They had fallen asleep quickly, their small bodies exhausted from hunger and fear. Lyra had stayed awake for a long time, whispering to them until their eyes closed. Then she sat silently, her gaze lost, like someone waiting for a storm that she already knew was coming. The human's mind was restless. Her words repeated in his head, "They are hunting us." The thought chilled him. Who were they? Why were they chasing a widow and 2 children? And most of all, why had fate dragged him into their fight? A sudden noise outside made him freeze. It was faint, but sharp, the sound of something stepping on gravel. His body tensed, he pushed the blanket aside and got up. His hand reached for the old hunting blade he kept near his bed. Moving quietly, he approached the window. His eyes scanned the darkness. For a moment he saw nothing, only the pale light of the moon falling on empty ground. Then, movement. A shadow shifted near the trees at the edge of his land. Too tall, too deliberate to be the wind. His breath caught. Someone was out there, watching. The door behind him creaked. He turned quickly. Lyra stood in the hallway, her face pale. She pressed a finger to her lips, her eyes wide with fear. She had heard it too. Together they stayed silent. The night stretched on, broken only by the sound of wind. Then came another noise, a low hum, faint but unnatural. It was the kind of sound no forest should make. The human gripped the blade tighter. His heart pounded. "They found us," Lyra whispered. Her voice cracked. She pulled her children closer. They were awake now, their sleepy eyes wide with confusion and terror. "Who are they?" the human asked, his voice low, almost a growl. "Hunters," she replied, trembling. "They want my children. They believe taking their blood will bring them power. My husband died protecting us, but still they follow. They will not stop until we are gone." The human's stomach turned. He stared at the door, imagining faceless figures outside, predators circling like wolves. He had thought his quiet life would keep him safe from the world. Now danger stood only steps away. Lyra clutched his arm suddenly. Her eyes searched his. "If they come inside, take my children and run. Leave me if you must, but protect them." The human's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but he could not. Her fear was too real, her desperation too deep. He nodded slowly, though the thought burned inside him. He had never been a father, never been a protector. But already the children looked at him with trust, as if he was the shield they had prayed for. The hum outside grew louder. The shadows moved again, closer this time. A branch snapped under. A heavy step, the children whimpered. Lyra held them close. The human stood near the door, his blade ready. Sweat slid down his back. His mind raced with thoughts of survival. Minutes felt like hours. Then, the noises faded. Slowly, the hum vanished. The ground outside grew silent again. Only the wind remained. The human did not move for a long time. He kept his eyes fixed on the door, his hand gripping the blade so hard that his knuckles turned white. Finally, he exhaled, a heavy breath he had been holding. "They are testing us," Lyra whispered. Her eyes filled with dread. "They will not stop. They are waiting for us. To lower our guard." The human nodded, his body still tense. He knew she was right. The hunters had found them, and tonight was only the beginning. When dawn finally broke, the world seemed calmer, but the weight of fear remained heavy in the air. The human looked at his small house, at the woman and children inside. He had taken them in, and now he was part of their danger, part of their story. He thought of sending them away, but the memory of their trembling faces stopped him. He could not do it, not anymore. He had opened the door, and now the choice was gone. As he looked out toward the tree line where shadows still seemed to linger, he whispered to himself, "If they come again, they'll find I'm not so easy to break." But deep inside he knew the real test was yet to come. The morning sun rose slowly, but it did little to chase away the fear from the night before. The human sat at his table, his blade resting close. To his hand, his eyes were tired, but he refused to close them. Every sound outside made his heart pound. Every gust of wind against the walls reminded him of shadows moving in the dark. Lyra sat quietly with her children. Sari clung to her arm, while little Tovan sat on her lap, chewing on a piece of bread. Their eyes still held fear, but there was something else too, trust. They kept looking at the human as if he was already part of them, as if he was their protector. He felt the weight of that gaze. It pressed on him like an invisible chain. He had lived his life alone, free of all responsibility. Now, in just one night, that had changed. He had not asked for this role, but it was his now, whether he wanted it or not. "Why do they call you cursed?" the human asked suddenly. His voice cut through the silence. Lyra's shoulders stiffened. She looked down, avoiding his eyes. "Because I survived," she whispered. "When my husband's clan fell, I lived. They said my survival brought shame. They said I carried death with me. They cast me out. And, with me, my children." The human's jaw clenched. He felt anger rise in him, not at her, but at those who had abandoned her. He looked at the children again, so small and fragile, and wondered what kind of people could throw them away. "Sorry." The older child spoke for the first time, her voice soft but steady. "Are you going to leave us too?" The question pierced his chest. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The child's eyes were wide, waiting, searching for an answer. The human swallowed hard. He wanted to say no, but he also knew the danger that followed them. To keep them meant risking everything before he could speak. A noise outside caught his attention. The same low hum from the night before, but closer. He rose quickly, blade in hand. Lyra pulled her children close, her body trembling. The human moved to the window. His eyes scanned the tree line. At first, he saw nothing. Then, there, between the branches, a flicker of movement. A tall figure watching, not moving, only standing as if waiting for something. His heart pounded. He turned back to the room, his voice low but firm. "They are here again." The children whimpered. Lyra's eyes filled with fear. But then something unexpected happened. Sari stood up, walked to the human, and tugged at his shirt. "Don't be afraid," she said softly. "You're strong. I know it." The words hit him harder than any weapon could. In that moment he understood. This was his test, not just to protect them with his blade, but to stand as something more. To stand as a father, a figure of strength when fear tried to break them. He crouched down, meeting Sari's eyes. "I will not leave you," he said firmly. His voice carried more weight than he realized. Lyra gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. The promise had been made, and there was no taking it back. He stood tall, gripping his blade. He opened the door and stepped outside. The morning air was sharp and cold. The figure near the trees did not move. The human shouted into the distance, his voice steady. "If you want them, you'll have to come through me." The figure shifted, then slowly stepped back, disappearing into the shadows. The hum faded, leaving silence once more. But the message was clear. This was only the beginning. When he returned inside, Lyra looked at him with tears in her eyes. Her children clung to her, but their faces were different now. There was fear, yes, but also hope. The human sat down, his blade across his lap. His chest rose and fell heavily. He whispered to himself, "So this is the test." And deep inside, he knew the truth. He had passed the first part, but the real trial was yet to come. The day passed slowly. The human kept watch near the window, his blade never far from reach. Lyra tried to keep her children calm, telling them gentle stories, but even her soft voice could not erase the fear in their eyes. Every shadow outside made them cling to her tighter. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps approaching the door. By evening, the air grew heavy. The human felt it first, a strange stillness that wrapped around the house like a warning. The birds had gone quiet. Even the insects seemed to vanish. His instincts screamed danger. He gripped his blade and whispered, "They're coming." Lyra froze, her arms tightening. Around her children, she did not ask how he knew. She felt it too. The silence was not natural. It was the silence before an attack. Then it happened. The window shattered with a sudden blast, shards of glass raining across the room. The children screamed. Lyra shielded them with her body. The human leapt forward, his blade flashing in the light of the lantern. Dark figures poured through the broken frame, tall and cloaked, their eyes glowing faintly with a cold light. One raised a weapon, a strange alien rod that hummed with deadly energy. The human lunged, striking fast. His blade cut through the weapon before it could fire. Sparks lit the air. The intruder hissed, stumbling back. Another hunter rushed in from the door, smashing it wide open. The human spun, his arm moving with speed born not from training but from desperation. The blade found its mark. The hunter collapsed with a roar. The house became chaos. The small room filled with crashing wood, flashing sparks, and shouts. Lyra dragged her children under the table, pressing them close, her eyes wide with terror. She whispered prayers in her alien tongue, hoping someone would hear. The human fought like a cornered beast. He was no soldier, but something inside him burned with raw fire. He ducked under a strike, slammed his shoulder into one attacker, then drove his blade deep into another. Blood, thick and dark, splattered across the floor. Still they kept coming. Two more hunters forced their way inside. Their cloaks brushed the walls as they moved. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. The human's arms ached, his chest heaved, but he stood firm. One hunter raised his weapon, toward the table where Lyra and the children hid. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. The human saw the terror on Lyra's face, the wide eyes of the children. Without thinking, he threw himself forward. His blade clashed with the weapon, sparks exploding between them. The force sent him crashing to the ground, pain shooting through his body. The hunter raised the weapon again, ready to strike. But before he could, the human rolled, swinging upward with all his strength. The blade cut through the hunter's arm. The weapon fell to the ground with a thud. The enemy howled and stumbled back. Lyra gasped, her hands covering her children's eyes. The human struggled to his feet, his body shaking, his vision blurred, but he refused to fall. Finally, with a roar, he charged. His blade met the last standing hunter. Their fight was brutal, fast, and filled with fury. The human's muscles burned, but he would not stop, not while the children were behind him, not while Lyra's tearful eyes begged him to survive. At last the hunter fell, silence filling the room once more. The human stood there, blood dripping from his blade, his chest rising and falling like a storm. Lyra crawled out from under the table, her children clinging to her. Tears streamed down her face as she rushed to him. "You fought them. You protected us," she whispered. Her voice broke as she touched his arm. "No one has ever done this for us." The human swayed on his feet, his body aching with pain. But when the children wrapped their small arms around his legs, calling him father with trembling voices, he felt something deeper than pain. He looked down at them, his throat tight. His mind whispered that more enemies would come, that this was only the beginning. But his heart whispered something else, that maybe, just maybe, he had found something worth fighting for. Outside, in the distance, faint cries echoed through the night. More hunters would soon follow. The battle was not over, but inside the broken house, in the warmth of a family's embrace, the human stood taller than he ever had before. The house was quiet again, but the silence was heavy. Smoke from broken weapons lingered in the air. The walls were scarred, the floor stained with blood. The human leaned against the table, his blade slipping from his tired hand. His body ached with cuts and bruises, yet his eyes stayed sharp, watching, listening, waiting for the next attack. Lyra rushed to his side, her hands trembling. She pressed a cloth to his arm where blood had run down. "You are hurt," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her eyes glistened as she looked at him. "Why would you fight so hard for us? You could have thrown us out. You could have saved yourself." The human shook his head slowly. His breath came heavy. "I couldn't. I saw the fear in your children's eyes. I could never send them back into the dark." Her lips trembled. She lowered her head, tears dripping onto the floor. "No one in my clan risked anything for us, not even family." Her voice shook with disbelief. "But you, a human, you fought until your blood covered the ground." The children clung to him now. Sari held his hand tightly, refusing to let go. Little Tovan pressed his small head against the human's chest, whispering the word, "Father," again. It was soft, but it pierced deeper than any blade. For a long moment the human stood frozen. He had never been called that before. The word felt heavy yet warm. It was not just a name, it was trust, hope, and belonging all in one. He knelt slowly, wincing at the pain in his legs. He looked at the children, their innocent faces staring up at him. "I am no father," he whispered, "but I will protect you, for as long as I can." Lyra gasped softly. Her hands covered her mouth. Her heart pounded as she watched him accept the role. Even if only in words, it was more than she had dared to hope for. The fire in the lantern flickered, casting long shadows across the room. The broken door let in cold air, reminding them that danger was still outside. Yet in that small circle of warmth, something powerful had been born. Lyra touched his shoulder gently. Her voice was soft, almost a vow. "From tonight you are part of us." The human looked at her, surprised. He saw no fear in her eyes now, only gratitude and something else. Respect, trust, and a spark of something deeper that words could not yet shape. But before peace could settle, a distant howl cut through the night. The sound carried across the trees, sharp and cruel. The hunters had not given up. They were gathering again, stronger, more furious. The children whimpered. Lyra pulled them close. The human pushed himself to his feet, his body screaming in pain, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. He picked up his blade, its edge still, stained with blood. He stood tall despite the weight on his shoulders. "They will come again," Lyra whispered, her voice shaking. "They will not stop until we are gone. Then we fight again," the human answered firmly. His eyes burned with a fire she had never seen before. "This house is no longer mine alone. It is yours. It is theirs, and I will not let anyone take it from us." Lyra's heart raced. She had lost everything. Her clan, her husband, her home. Yet in this moment she felt something new rising from the ashes. This human was not just protecting them, he was claiming them as his own. The children looked at him with wide eyes. Their fear began to fade, replaced by something stronger: belief. They believed he could keep them safe, even against the shadows outside. The bond had been forged, not in calm words or promises, but in fire, blood, and sacrifice. As the night stretched on, the human stood guard by the broken door, his body weak, but his spirit unyielding. Lyra sat close with her children, watching him. Her lips moved silently in prayer, not to the gods of her people, but for the strength of the man who had given them hope. In the distance, the hunters prepared for their next strike, but inside that small house, a family had been born, and nothing in the universe could easily break the bond that had taken root there. The night passed with slow hours. The human stayed awake by the door, his blade resting across his knees. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but his mind refused to let him sleep. Every whisper of wind against the trees sounded like danger. Every crack of wood outside made his hand tighten on the hilt. Lyra sat close with her children wrapped in her arms. They had cried themselves to sleep, their small faces pressed against her chest. She looked at the human in the dim lantern light, his strong figure bent but unbroken, and she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Safety, when dawn came. The hunters never returned. The forest outside was quiet, too quiet, but for the first time, the silence did not feel empty. It felt like a pause, a warning, a moment before another storm. Yet inside the broken house, something new had been born. The human rose slowly, his body stiff with pain. He walked to the table where Lyra and her children sat. The children blinked at him sleepily, then smiled weakly. They still clung to him with their eyes, as if his presence alone could keep the monsters away. "You should leave," he said at last. His voice was heavy. "If you stay here, they will return, stronger than before. They will not stop. You'll only bring more danger to my home." Lyra's lips parted, her eyes shone with tears. "And where would we go?" she whispered. "We have no home, no family, no place in this world. If you send us away, it will be the same as killing us." The human froze. Her words cut deeper than any blade. He looked at the children, at Sari clutching the broken toy in her small hand, at Tovan hiding half his face behind his sister. Their eyes begged him, not with words but with silence. He turned away, his chest tight. His life had been empty for so long. He had chosen the quiet, chosen to live without ties, without anyone to depend on him. But now, with just one knock at midnight, everything had changed. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "I am not strong enough to fight them forever. I am not a father, I am not a protector." Lyra stood suddenly. She walked to him and placed her trembling hand on his arm. Her voice was soft but fierce. "You already are. You fought for us. You bled for us. You gave us a place when no one else would. That is more than any father in my clan ever gave." The human looked at her, stunned. Her words burned away the doubt inside him. His eyes dropped to the children. Sari nodded as if to confirm her mother's words. "We don't need perfect," she said softly. "We just need you." His throat tightened. The weight he had carried all night shifted. Not heavier, but different. It was no longer the burden of strangers, it was the bond of family. Slowly, he bent down, his voice low, steady. "Then from today, I will not let anyone take you. This house is yours now, and so am I." Lyra gasped. Tears spilled from her eyes as she pressed her hands to her mouth. The children rushed forward, throwing their arms around him. Tovin whispered, "Father," against his chest. Sari clung to his side, their small bodies shaking not with fear this time but with relief. For the first time in years, the human felt something warm inside. A home. Not just walls and a roof, but a place filled with laughter and voices. A place filled with hearts that depended on his. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes wet but glowing with hope. She placed her hand over his and whispered, "From this day we are yours and you are ours." The human nodded slowly, his heart heavy, but steady. He knew the hunters would return. He knew danger still circled in the shadows. But now, he was no longer standing alone. He had something worth fighting for, something worth dying for. The broken door creaked in the morning wind, but inside the house no longer felt broken. Inside was warmth, inside was family. The knock at midnight had changed everything. It had forged something stronger than fear, stronger than blood. It had made them a family bound not by birth but by choice. And in that choice they found strength.